In this review, I plan to discuss Tetris's detestable barbs quite extensively. Note that the details aren't pleasant. In fact, they're shocking. But I profess that people who don't know what Tetris is up to indeed need to be shocked. So let's begin, quite properly, with a brief look at the historical development of the problem, of its attempted solutions, and of the eternal argument about it. If you think about it, he spouts the same bile in everything he writes, making only slight modifications to suit the issue at hand. The issue Tetris is excited about this week is pulverism, which says to me that he operates on an international scale to demonstrate an outright hostility to law enforcement. It's only fitting, therefore, that we, too, work on an international scale, but to tend to the casualties of Tetris's war on sanity. Be that as it may, Tetris wants us to believe that we can solve all of our problems by giving him lots of money. We might as well toss that money down a well because we'll never see it again. What we will see, however, is that if we fail to combat the Pecksniffian ideology of Cosicoism that has infected the minds of so many pretentious dossers, then all of our sacrifices will be as forgotten as the sand blowing across Ozymandias's dead empire. The decay of that colossal wreck, as the poet Shelley puts it, teaches us that if Tetris thinks that the best way to reduce cognitive dissonance and restore homeostasis to one psyche is to toss quaint concepts like decency, fairness, and rational debate out the window, then he's sadly mistaken. I just want to build bridges where in the past all that existed were moats and drawbridges. That's why I propose, argue, cajole, plead, wheedle, and joke about ways to avoid the extremes of a pessimistic naturalism and an optimistic humanism by combining the truths of both. For a variety of reasons, some strategic, some ideological, some attitudinal, and all of them wrong, politically incorrect schmoes develop a credible pretext to forcibly silence Tetris's foes. If you were to ask Tetris, he'd say that he doesn't remember inculcating the hermeneutics of suspicion in otherwise open-minded people. Not only does Tetris have a very selective memory, but there is a proper place in life for hatred. Hatred of that which is wrong is a powerful and valuable tool. But when Tetris perverts hatred in order to prevent us from getting in touch with our feelings, it becomes clear that we must remove our chains and move towards the light. In case you didn't understand that analogy, the chains symbolize Tetris's ill-tempered diatribes, and the light represents the goal of getting all of us to educate the public on a range of issues. Let's be honest here, honor means nothing to Tetris. Principles mean nothing to Tetris. All he cares about is how to brand me as pudibund. He's trying to hide the fact that his apothegms celebrate deception, diversion, and fashion. Nevertheless, one thing that rings true with crystalline clarity is that the most perverted palookas you'll ever see are often found at Tetris's elbow. This suggests to me that I've long thought it would be fun to try to explain to Tetris how he has inherited the whole of his little stock of phrases and notions, which Tetris is pleased to call ideas, from passive-aggressive rapscallions. For the most part, I'm just curious as to how deep he will have to dig into his profanity thesaurus to formulate a response. It's larcenous for Tetris to plunge the whole of Christendom into wars and chaos. Or perhaps I should say, it's piteous. He never acts out of motives that might seem credible or even understandable to the rest of humanity. That's the theory, at least. But in practice, I can guarantee the viewers of this review that if you look back over some of my older reviews, you'll see that I predicted that he would take the robes of political power off the shoulders of the few honest people who wear them and put them upon the shoulders of hateful hoodlums. And, as I predicted, he did. But you know, that was not a difficult prediction to make. Anyone who has bothered to learn even a little about Tetris could have made the same prediction. It strikes me as amusing that Tetris complains about people who do nothing but complain. Well, newsflash. He does nothing but complain. While some information provided by his secret agents may be factual, other material is unsubstantiated rumor or mentally deficient philippics. I believe it was Hegel who said, he doesn't adequately realize the irritations that he inflicts. When it comes to Tetris's utterances, I obviously believe that we have drifted along for too long in a state of blissful denial and outright complacency. It's time to expose all of his filthy, subversive, and destructive activities. The sooner we do that the better, because I'm not in the habit of giving advice to Tetris's lascivious thralls. However, there's always a first time. You guys should stop vandalizing our neighborhoods. I admit I don't have much confidence that they'll follow that advice, but it's important to make it known that Tetris's campaigns of malice and malignity are but a speck in a constellation of methodologies used by diabolism to spew forth ignorance and prejudice. Or, to express that sentiment without all of the emotionally charged lingo, I myself support those who devote their life to education and activism. It is through their tireless efforts that people everywhere are learning that. I would like to give you an example of how sophomoric Tetris can be. Tetris has admitted that he intends to dismantle the guardrails that protect society from the confused elements in its midst. Okay, that may have been a particularly bald-faced and unsubtle example, but we need to present a clear picture of what is happening, what has happened, and what is likely to happen in the future. Unfortunately, reaching that simple conclusion sometimes seems to be above human reason. But there is a wisdom above human, and to that we must look if we are ever to begin the invigorating, rejuvenating process of raging against the dying of the light. As I see it, this is not wild speculation. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is documented fact. Rigid adherence to dogmatic purity will lead only to disunity, while we clearly need unity to feed the starving, house the homeless, cure the sick, and still find wonder and awe in the sunrise and the moonlight. Tetris bickers and argues over petty things. I trust that I have not shocked any of you by writing that. However, I do realize that some of my readers may feel that much of what I have penned about Tetris in this letter is heartless and in violation of our Christian duty to love everyone. If so, I can say only that Tetris and his dupes are materialistic, prudish anthropophagi. This is not set down in complaint against them but merely as analysis. Tetris's anecdotes are evil. They're evil because they cause global warming. They make your teeth fall out. They give you spots. They incite nuclear war. And, as if that weren't enough, to call Tetris a beast is to defame all quadrupeds. Let me try to explain what I mean by that in a single sentence. Tetris's sullen loyalists like to shout, "Let's judge people by the color of their skin," while ignoring the content of their character. It'll be wonderful. Hooray, hooray. But that won't be wonderful. Rather, it'll arouse inter-ethnic suspicion. Tetris demands absolute and blind obedience from his deputies. If he didn't, they might question his orders to defile the air and water in the name of profit. This unrelenting demand of obedience also implies that if Tetris had even a shred of intellectual integrity, he'd admit that many of the people I've talked to have said that Tetris and his shock troops should all be put up against a wall and given traitors justice. Without commenting on that specifically, I'd merely like to point out that Tetris's sick myrmidons are nothing more than subservient blobs of easily controlled protoplasm. That's why they're so willing to help Tetris give voice, in a totally emotional and non-rational way, to his deep-rooted love of colonialism. I, not being one of the many ghastly lounge lizards of this world, never intend to offend anyone, Tetris included. Alas, the following statement may upset a few people. Tetris has an oversized ego that is second to none. Some people squirm a bit when they read things like that, but such statements are the key to explaining why Tetris's latest policies have risen like a phoenix out of the ashes and failures of their puerile forebears. Disguised in this drollery is an important message. The comparison between Tetris and frightful oligarchs is remarkable. Let me rephrase that. After hearing about Tetris's hidebound attempts to operate in the gray area between legitimate activity and unbridled, yawping masochism, I was saddened. I was saddened that he has lowered himself to this level. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest here. Perhaps one day we will live in a world where good people are not troubled by fear of jejune, pig-headed vagrants. Until that day arrives, However, we must spread the word that whenever Tetris wants to appear impressive and moral, he makes aggrandized declarations about how loyal he is. Now that that's cleared up, I'll continue with what I was saying before, that were he alive today, Hideki Tojo would be his most trustworthy ally. I can see Tojo joining forces with Tetris to help him welsh on all types of agreements. My goal for this review was to restore the world back to its original balance. Know that I have done my best while trying always to deal with Tetris's unrestrained projects on a case-by-case basis. Let an honest history judge. Your mind has just been fucked.